Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of My Bigfoot Sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of run-down no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to mybigfootsighting.com.
I was featured on episode 76 on My Bigfoot Sighting. I have found that there's a number of different folks that follow this Bigfoot subject. Some of them are very intelligent, very educated people that rarely, if ever, leave their computer in their house, in their office, or wherever, and they follow it. They make deductions and opinions formed from the various information. And if it swings into the parameters where it doesn't make a lot of sense, they discount it. They'll even badger or belittle people that follow that. And yet they've never been out there and experienced some of this stuff for themselves. There's just a wide range of believers that follow this subject. And it's hard for some people to accept or believe that there are a substantial number of folks spread across the U.S. that have regular interaction with these subjects on their land, or they know an area where they go to, and they're very successful. And it's for a number of reasons. They're not there to merchandise these subjects. They're not there to make them a spectacle or invade their habitation. They basically respect them. And it was hard for me to believe that there are people, it's not a big deal. They grow up. Some of their kids have grown up even playing with some of the juveniles in areas. And I know that sounds really incredible, but I've seen some of this for myself. But this one particular video that I shared with you, it's on my YouTube channel. I was in East Texas with about a dozen people interested or researching the Bigfoot subject. And it was adjacent to a ranch of a person, and I will not drop names, that is well known within the Bigfoot research groups. And they had had a history in their family of Bigfoot activity for a couple generations. And we were adjacent to the ranch on open land. We had been out there, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 times, and there's other stories I can tell you there that are pretty incredible. But on our night expedition on the backside of this hill on a forest access road, we had noticed eye shine. And I've had people say, oh, it's reflection. No, that can't be. It really doesn't follow any logic. Number one, you've got to have ambient light to reflect it. When you're out there in the pitch dark and something is very bright, you can even see them blinking at you, as their eyes bat. It's production of light. It's a luminescence. It's found in fish. It's found in fireflies and glowworms and different luminescent surf from the phosphorus. It happens in nature, so it's not a big deal. I've seen it. But we had noticed eye shine up in the hill there at various times. Well, the day that we were there to kind of hang out, our plans were to build a fire, get there before dark, build a fire, put out folding chairs. And one pretty well-known benefactor in Bigfoot research was going to be there later, too. Won't mention any names there either, but it was an assortment of people. Well, I was kind of the newer person in my experiences. This is going back about 15 years. I was there helping gathering firewood, and I started getting that distinct feeling of being watched again. In most cases, when I get it and feel it, the big guys are nearby. I have no explanation other than it's a sixth sense. It's a sensitivity. Can it be developed? I don't know. I just know that I can feel them, and sometimes it's directional. I know where to look. Like if I'm looking one way, I sense it behind me, and I'll turn around and kind of zero in on where they are. Again, I can't put it in, I can't explain it. I just know it's there. And I was there with that about a dozen people, and I stopped gathering firewood, and I kind of got away from all the talking and the distraction off by myself, going back towards my vehicle. And at some point, that feeling got really strong, and I turned to my right. I remember it clearly. And I just said out loud, I said, "Okay, big boy, I can feel you watching. Where are you?" Or something that, verbatim, not sure exactly, but it was, I know, "Okay, big boy, I feel you watching me. Where are you?" Basically. And I said it out loud. And Vic, again, people are going to say, no, but I'm just telling you what happened is I heard a call come out from that ridge line I was kind of glancing at, and I scanned it. Now, this ridge line at the top of the hill was later, we used GPS waypoints to be 538 yards where this subject was, sitting up in the tree. It's about a third of a mile. And unless you've got serious binoculars or a telescope or something, you're not going to see it. But I couldn't see anything with the naked eye, so I got over to my pickup and pulled out a pair of 70 by 50 binoculars, and I started scanning the trees and ridgeline in that area. And at some point, I noticed a dark object. Looked up in the trees at the time, but I thought it may be on the side of the hill. Again, it's hard, on perspective to really get an absolute at that. Even at that distance with the 7 by 50 binoculars, it was still a small dot. But it didn't blend in with the browns and the greens of the trees. It was something different there. So I got in my truck, I got a tripod out, I got a little mini camcorder and a jury rig 30 power monocular. No high dollar equipment. I wished I would have had it then. And the thing is, I can kick myself. My wife was there with a good single lens reflex camera, and she would have been able to zoom in it much better and probably got a much clearer image. And I was so involved, it just did not register. And it happens to a lot of people, Vic. There's people that have had visual sightings, and they become so engrossed in what's going on that after it happens, they realize, their camera's hanging there. I get that. I've been there. I've done that. I understand it. And people say, yeah, that was convenient. You forgot to take a picture. Well, it happens. It happens more than what people think. But at the time, I didn't think to call over to my wife. I was too, engrossed in what I was doing. I got this little mini camcorder rolling, and I put the monocular over the lens on a jury rig telephoto setup, and it didn't do too bad, but I had problems with alignment. And if you watch the video, you see I'll get out of alignment, and I got to bring it back together and, get it all going again. But nonetheless, I got a fairly decent video of it. But as I started videoing this subject, at first, I wasn't sure what I was looking at because the only thing I could see was a 1x1 LED screen on the back side of my mini camcorder, and I didn't have my reading glasses on. So you can hear my kind of incredulous, well, there's something there, it's a dark spot, yada, yada, yada. Took me a little while to realize it was a big guy, but I was videoing it. This subject, later we found him to be about 60 feet up in a loblolly pine tree. That area there was a lot of activity and stuff. But what I noticed, Vic, is while I was videoing, of course, and you can hear it on the audio, they give out another call to me. Okay, you can hear it come on the audio. The camera did pick that one audio call up. So it wasn't like they were trying to hide. I mean, he was discreetly up in a tree in an observation point, but he didn't drop out of sight. I think, I can't, it's an assumption. I'm not sure if he knew I was videoing or not. Don't know. And I'm not sure how good and clear their vision is at that range. I'm sure they can see a lot better than us. Eagles have incredible eyesight, up to almost a mile, being able to identify things. So we're not sure about their level of eyesight, but I'm sure, or I know, it's a lot better than ours. But as I was taking that, a friend came over and asked me what I was doing. He was wanting to see. I think he eventually got binoculars of his own and told me, oh, that's just a buzzard. And I told him, I said, it's a 500-pound buzzard, because even at that distance, I kind of get a size comparison, you know, of a buzzard up in the tree and a big guy. Well, before I finished, yeah. And after I looked at it, I said, yep, that was a big guy there. But there were other things that occurred in that area. But I think what was significant, we had to go back. I knew where it was, but to run up that or drive up that logging road back to the location, there were 2 tree lines, one little valley between there. And unless you have precise reference points, it's not like I could have just walked up there and found that location. As you move up there, you lose your reference points going into a lower depression. You come back in and the whole tree line looks different. So it was near dark, but it wasn't something that I could have just went up there and identified where this subject was. So a couple weeks or a week later, I went back up. I set the camera up. I had an associate walk up that road, and I could see glimpses of him here and there. And I'd give him, we had walkie-talkies. I'd tell him to go more to the right, more to the right. And then when he got just about the approximate location, I said, right there. And he said, Rick, you need to come up here. Okay. So he kept his position. I came up there. And what we found, Vic, were these loblolly pine trees. It was an assortment along this tactically high ridge that did a very convenient dogleg bend in the main trunk. It would make, in most cases, a 90-degree bend horizontal and then a 90-degree bend back up vertical. And it left these saddle areas, you know, where you could go up and sit on its side saddle or, you know, regular saddle. There were limbs and branches nearby you could kind of hold on to. It made a good, what I would consider an observation point. And you could see where the branches below that dog leg had been broken off. You could kind of see the polished scuff marks where something had passed over those surfaces. And in some cases, all the bark was even worn off. So they looked like they were used fairly regularly. And a forester shared with me a story. In order for that to occur on a pine tree, you have to break off the center growth feeder, break it off, and one of the side branch feeders will turn upward and it will become the dominant growth or height feeder, but you'll get this distinctive dogleg bend in it, okay, in the growth. And these things were spread out along that ridge. in a very tactical location at the top of the ridge. And from those points, you could see the road behind us where we had noticed eye shine on previous occasions. You could see forward down the hill. You could pretty much get a 360-degree view of this area. Now, I could see this happening due to natural causes on, say, one of these pine trees, but to be intermittently spread along this ridge, I find that hard to be a natural occurrence. Again, it's not a bullseye, but my theory is, were these young sapling trees broken like that years before, with the foresight of having these grow into a good observation post years later? That would not be a dumb, base mind. It would be a mind that would have intellect, cognitive thinking, and foresight to do that. And me, in my research and what I've come across, is that these are a people. I call them the forest people. My Cherokee ancestors never equated them to an animal or anything. They believe them a tribe or a clan. And many of your other native nations believe the same way. And my passion is that I bring interesting stuff either in my Facebook page or on these podcasts to exchange information. I'm not trying to prove to the skeptic that these subjects exist. If somebody is really wanting that evidence, there are many organizations that sponsor. Some of them are better, some of them are worse, but I've been on numerous BFRO expeditions, met great people, had a great time, and, experienced some incredible things. Probably my biggest enjoyment is to get out in the field with somebody that is in that neutral, well, maybe they exist, or I think they could exist, but I'm not sure. I may have related this on the last podcast, but I was out with Charlie Raymond, his lovely wife, out on one of the KBR, Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organizations, and his wife's name's Lindsay. I just kind of double clutched, senior moment there. But they host some incredible, very good venues in the area of Kentucky. Charlie knows it well, knows where the activity reports have come from. But I was out with them, I want to say 2 years ago. I've been 3 or 4 times into Kentucky. It holds a great place in my heart because Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Georgia, Alabama, North and South Carolina, and West Virginia were all the original Cherokee people's land. And the Cherokee called them the Uni Udalwahi, and loosely translated forest beings of the lost tribe. They would leave edible roots and berries out for them. And in turn, the big guys would watch over them during hunting and gathering endeavors. A symbiont relationship. It wasn't predatory, not a lot of conflict. I'm sure there were things that maybe happened here and there, and even intertribal conflict happened, with the native nations. But for the most part, an amiable type of environment for both parties. But if that was the case for thousands of years, it would only make sense that the big guys might understand Cherokee. I've talked with people that have heard it's even on the internet. I think it's the Samurai Chatter. I think the BFR website at Naval Retired Linguist even says, yes, it's a language, and it's been recorded. I think Ron Moorhead recorded it several decades ago. But anyway, if these subjects, which I believe they are, a people and understand, if they conversed with the Cherokees over centuries, it would only make reason that they might understand Cherokee. So I've used it out in the field. I'm not fluent. I can greet, a few phrases, and I'm sure my Cherokee has an English accent to it. My grandmother was fluent. My aunts and uncles were fluent. My grandma was full blood, by the way, and I'm very grateful for the native bloodline, but I'm equally proud of the Scots, Irish, Dutch, and German that flow through my veins. It's who I am. I can't be anybody but me. But in Kentucky on this expedition a couple years ago, we went out and weren't trying to track them down or anything. We just went to a location, built a fire, put folding chairs out. One guy had an acoustical guitar, did some great songs and playing, very accomplished musician and a good singer. And it's stuff like that if you're in the big guy's neck of the woods, they're going to be curious. They're going to come in and see what's going on. And my recommendation is the best way to get them to come in is just go hang out, have a good time, a lot of laughing and just interaction. And if you know where and how to look, big guys will be there and they'll be watching. Now, will they come out of cover? And no, they're not open. They're very discreet. And that's one reason a lot of people don't see them is they use cover and concealment. And they're ninjas, actually, of the forest. But anyway, at some point during the singing, again, I got that feeling of being watched and got up from the circle and walked away out into the near pitch dark using a red game cap light so it wouldn't ruin my night vision. And I kind of looked down at the river there. There was a river and there was an access road that we had hiked in on. I want to say the better part of 2 miles. It was one way in, one way out. I think about halfway in, we saw a night fisherman down at the river, had his lantern hung, doing night fishing. It was the only vehicle we saw. And we were down at the end there. No other vehicles, no other people. And I started scanning across this field, and there was a tree line down there by the river. And I picked up a tall, upright thermal signature, walking on 2 legs and looking at the breaks and gaps. They weren't out in the open, but they were behind this line of foliage, but I could see enough bleed through that I could tell it was tall and upright. Later, where their head was located at one portion of a tree, we calculated it to be 8 to 10 feet tall. So it wasn't a short upright, it was a tall upright figure. But at the time I was watching it and it moved, I saw a couple other thermal signatures and movement. Never got a real good look there, but there may have been more than one subject. But I did clearly identify the location of this one person. And no clothing lines. It was all from top to bottom, same thermal signature that I had in the black hot mode. And if somebody's wearing clothes, the insulation properties of, say, a shirt versus pants or a jacket or a cap or whatever, you can see it with a thermal scope because the thermal signature is going to be different based on what the insulation properties are. And I saw no clothing lines. This was all one clear thermal signature. Could it have been an NBA basketball player out there without a flashlight and not wearing a stitch of clothes? It's not impossible, but highly unlikely. Knowing this area of having Bigfoot activity, I would say more than likely it was a Bigfoot. It was one of the big guys. So at some point, one of the people there that was curious walked over and he said, "Rick, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm watching a big guy." He goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, he's down there along the river watching us." He said, "Oh man, I'd love to." I said, "Hey, here, come here." And in the dark, I gave him my scope. And I said, "Now where we're standing, look at your 11 o'clock position down across the field. You can see the field and you see the tree line, 11 o'clock position." And he got real quiet. And I waited a little bit. I said, "Do you see anything?" And he goes, "Yeah." He said, "I can see his head and shoulders. He's peeking out from around the tree." I said, "Yep, that's him." So he's watching that. Well, there was a side creek that flowed down to the main river, and it was to our right, maybe 100, 150 feet. We're pretty close to it. And we began to hear subtle movement, maybe a crackle of leaves and everything. Something was moving over there very subtly. And I said, "Did you hear that?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Man, I think we're being flanked by another one," which they'll do. I won't say it's a game, but it appears to be that some of the younger juveniles, once your location's identified, they may have kind of a game of how close they can get without being seen. And you can even see that. I think it's on the internet, called the Woodpile Bigfoot, where there's a guy visiting a lady and she got a big campfire going, and he, with his thermal, observes this subject on the other side of the campfire, watching him, using the wood pile as blocking out. But anyway, I said, "Yeah, I think we have one flanking us." So while he was watching the big guy down by the river, I said, "Hey, look, watch him. Tell me if he does anything." And he was watching him, and I said, "Gato uste, de jado." And I was asking him, "What is your name?" And I said, did he do anything? And he goes, "No, he's still standing there." I said, "Gato uste, de jado. What is your name?" Said it twice. And the second time, where we were hearing the movement along that side creek, heard a big bullfrog deep voice go claw one time. And that's no in Cherokee. That really, to me, was like icing on the cake. I got a cognizant. Now, it was a no. I'm not going to, I don't know you well enough. I mean, it was just an emphatic no. Now, I don't know if it was a no to me. I don't want to tell you my name, or it was a no to one of their other associates. I don't know. It was a clear no in Cherokee. And it didn't come from the people behind us by the campfire. And I don't know anybody else there that spoke Cherokee. But anyway, that was a good time that night. But I've got night vision video of these subjects moving. I was in Kentucky. Two subjects were out in a graveyard by a church there, old turn of the century church in central Kentucky. I was with Charlie Raymond's expedition. One of the people there had movement, came back to where we were gathered there next to the church. It's a church cemetery, combination. And he had walked down to a tree line behind the church and spooked something big. And he came back. He was a little bit, it startled him. And while we're talking and he's telling us, and I got this on audio, you can hear the tree break behind the church. I mean, it's a good sized branch, or it's a tree breaking. It isn't some small little snap. It's a crunch and a pretty prolific thing if you listen to it, which we all stopped and looked. And then he started over there, and we could see two subjects out in the middle of the cemetery. I want to say 100 yards from us. And I've got it on thermal night vision. I don't have any high dollar stuff. I couldn't zoom in, but you can see the thermal signatures. And I'm not interested in that pristine shot. If I can locate and I know something's there, that thermal scope's fine with me. I don't care if it's a coyote or one of the big guys. And sometimes you can't tell the difference. Other times you can. At least I know there's something there. And that's me. We were watching these two subjects, and they were kind of partially hidden by a tree line. And one of the guys was walking towards him. I wish he would have waited and we could have watched him longer. But at some point, they decided to leave. And it looks like a video running on fast forward. They're there, they're moving, and then it's just a blur as they leave that little tree they were hiding behind, and they run to, or I don't know. I know Native Americans have described them floating like an elk through the forest. And there's been other eyewitnesses that say they don't bounce or anything. It's like they're on roller skates. And I understand that because I've seen it on video, night vision video. This thing leaves from behind that tree and makes that tree line. I was able to the 9 frames per second rate on my night vision scope, which isn't great. Better ones are 30 frames a second. This is 9 frames per second. It covered in about 3/4 of a second. Trying to remember the distances. It was 100 and something feet. I've got it all written down. I can't recall it. You get older, you forget all the numbers, but this thing from a dead stop to clear that distance had to average, if I remember my figures right, 45 miles an hour. Okay. From a dead stop, cover 100 and something feet. I can't remember exactly, but I figured 45 miles an hour from a dead stop to just reach that tree line that it disappeared into. That's an incredible speed. That's an ability that a lot of people can't wrap their minds around, but it's the one of many things that I don't understand. I just know these subjects are very much like us in a lot of ways, but they're also very different in other ways. I don't understand it. You get into talking about this high rate of speed. You go into cloaking, which a lot of people don't want to hear. I've got a night vision video in southeastern Oklahoma. I've got 5 people with me. We had stuff thrown at us, one, growled, and I don't think it was highly aggressive, but the newbies there with me were pretty jumpy. We're talking thick cover, canopy, brush. I don't know how, Vic, they can thread objects through all of this foliage without you hearing it coming through the leaves or branches, the way they can thread it so accurately. But we were in an area back there and we had hiked for a while and it stopped, and there were 2 guys. One was resting on a root knot, big oak tree, and then on the other side, another guy was just kind of leaning against it. That oak tree was probably 3 feet in diameter. Maybe it was a big oak tree. So they're both kind of relaxing there in the dark, and we're just taking a break, talking, maybe drinking a little water or something. Pitch black. It was at night. And there wasn't a swish or, coming through the leaves and branches, but we were under a pretty thick canopy of trees, and there were bushes and under foliage all around us. This object smacked this tree hard. It was a crack when it hits. I've got an audio of it. And when I brought my thermal scope up, this broken limb was still spinning on the ground. It had that much force behind it. It was about 3 feet long and about 5 to 7 inches in diameter. If it had hit either one of them, it could have hurt them bad. Might have even killed them. Of course, one of them jumped up and asked if we had thrown that. No, and they said, man, I'm coming over by you guys. That was too close. Of course, he didn't use that exact phrase. A lot of adjectives in there I won't put in there. But yeah, he was pretty upset. I don't know how they thread that stuff. That's an ability. They're throwing abilities. But that same night, in another area, we can hear the footsteps, and I fire up my FLIR thinking I'm going to see a subject 20 feet away from me walking perpendicular to us. And all I see is a very faint line showing up white. I was in the black hot mode, and it was a white. It was a cold line moving from my right to my left. You can actually, and I've looked at the video over and over, you can actually see the shoulder, the front leading shoulder and head as this subject's moving. It walks by us at about 20 feet, and it doesn't blot out any of the trees' thermal signatures, nothing other than this little faint line on the front. Now, you talk about cloaking, and people have, and you mention that, and people roll their eyes, and they say, yeah, right. Look, there were 5 other people there, or 4. There was maybe 5 total. I can't remember, but it was 4 or 5 of us total. They were there. They were there and experienced it. It's just one of many things. I find it very fascinating. Probably the biggest surprise to me was just this last Kentucky Bigfoot expedition in October. Had some great stuff happen then, but it's the one this year. I'm sorry, not the 2022. I've got a pretty good video there of a side peeker or a couple. But anyway, it was this April. Yeah, mid-April last month. I was there, had a decent time, great people. I think the last night expedition, I was tired. I'd done a lot of hiking the day before. We went to an area, and a couple of the guys, they called it Dogman Trail. There had been a reported sighting of a dogman-like creature. And I can tell you right now, Vic, I don't care to see one of those. I don't know if they exist or not, but I don't want to see something like that. They sound pretty vicious and mean, and it's not something I care to run into out there. I'm not looking for that, but I didn't really want to care about running down the trail or them hiking down the trail where this subject was seen. So I told him, I said, just leave me here there was a parked pickup and a parked car, and I'll just hang out here in this swampy area. You know, you guys can go up the Dogman Trail, hike up that way. We've got walkie-talkies. We talk, and I'll just sit out here and enjoy the night. And I'm out there by myself. It's dark. I won't say pitch dark, but it's dark. And I could have sat in the truck, but I like to listen and hear, see what's going on. And I was looking with my thermal scope and everything, and it was a better part of an hour. They were gone nearly close to maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. I don't know. But during that time, I'm leaning against the left front fender of the pickup, and the car's parked probably 10 feet away. It's parallel to the pickup, but there's probably a good 10 feet between the pickup and the car where they were parked. And I'm standing but leaning against the left front fender of the pickup, and I hear a thump, 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 thump. And I'm looking over at the car, and I'm thinking, man, is there something failing? I mean, the best way I can describe it is somebody drumming on an ender fender well or something like that, okay? It didn't have a metallic thumping sound. It sounded more like plastic being thumped on. But I'm looking over in the dim light, and I fire up my thermal scope, and I'm thinking, man, did a squirrel get up in the wheel well and start doing a dance or something? I mean, it was a thump, 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 thump. And so I walk around there, and I've got my thermal scope fired up, and it's a clear parking area. There's no vegetation or bushes for anything to retreat to and hide. And I'm kind of looking over the whole car, and then I'm going around and doing a 360 walk around looking, you know, and I come back to the pickup fender and I'm just a little bit, bumfuzzled, but not thinking too much of it. And I go leaning against the fender again, and lo and behold, the drumming starts again on that vehicle. And I'm looking now, I've got my thermal fired up. I can see the whole vehicle. I can see the clear parking area. And I walk towards the vehicle, but making sure any lines of retreat that I would see something moving. I never see anything. And that happened multiple times until I got tired of trying to figure out exactly what was going on. And I flipped on a bright white cap light and waited for everybody else to come back. I wasn't scared, but I was just, I will admit, I had visions of a ugly dogman creature rising up from behind the car. It had me a little concerned, but I wasn't terrified or anything, but had a good time nonetheless. But I don't know. Somebody asked me later, they said, well, did you look under the car? And maybe it was a good thing I didn't. I don't know. It never occurred to me to look under the car. But anyway, it's stuff like that happened. And I guess I'm about finished for today, if this will work.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow. and the 5-string melodies grooving. With the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. The sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. His pickup man had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, bucking hay bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Pace of the city life drives me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Something going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm, fried chicken, porch swing, mama's best sweet tea kind of sound.